The Icons of Real Estate Podcast. Are you ready to learn the proven money-making secrets from top-producing Icon agents? Ready to skyrocket your business? This podcast is for you. Tune in every week with your host, Tomasz Fonseca, and find out how to implement proven strategies to 10 times your business, from $3 million to $30 million in just 12 months. Brought to you by the Masters in Real Estate Marketing, Arter SEO.
Welcome, guys. Welcome back to the Icons of Real Estate podcast. I'm your host, Masoud Haq. I'm thrilled to welcome Sam Andress, a top-performing realtor based in Granada Hills, California. With years of experience in the real estate market, Sam has helped countless families find their dream homes in this beautiful part of San Fernando Valley. Whether you're buying, selling, or just curious about the market, Sam's expertise is unmatched. Sam, how are you doing today?
Doing well. Thanks, Masoud. The transition for me, I don't want to say it was easy, but it was a little more seamless than some, because transitioning into a commission-based or sales-based industry where you don't get any income, basically your income is commensurate with how hard you work and the outcomes you provide, right? So it's endless and it's nothing at the same time, right? It's all dependent upon you and how you serve people and close deals. So having my wife, because I get asked a lot, how did I get started in real estate? Having my wife as my backbone was instrumental. I mean, I was paramount. I don't know if I could have made the transition completely or for sure as easily as I did. And so I got my license like 6 months after we bought our own first home, and just kind of went off to the races. One of my good or high school friends that I'd known from early childhood happened to be my real estate broker, invited me onto his team, showed me the ropes from A to Z. They happen to also be a mortgage company as well. So I'm a little unique in that I do real estate broker sales, and I also am a licensed mortgage loan officer. So I do both mortgages and real estate sales. And so I've done that for the past decade plus, actually a little more than a decade, and haven't looked back.
Wow. It's really refreshing to hear that you came from a single mother household. I know, friends and family of mine that have come from single mother household, and I really respect it. It really, unfortunately, the statistical likelihood of you of someone coming from a single mother household and being successful in the field is really disadvantageous to them being in that position, right? So
Sure.
credit to you to really make it out of that and really be in the go to college and learn from Morgan and Stanley and things like that, and
Yeah.
be in the position that you are now. I guess, was that your real why of why you wanted to become so successful as you have become at this current moment in time?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
there's always people that are way more successful than me. I think it's all relative. I think everybody has to figure out what their, you have your why. And for me, it's my family, my wife, my son, and then just my legacy that I'm going to leave behind. And, really, I kind of settled on real estate as, back 10, 11 years ago, as this is the avenue where I can continue to serve people at a high level. I consider myself a person of character, integrity, competency, and holding myself to the highest standards. And so I really thought, look, most people need significant help being guided through the real estate transaction process. And this is the perfect marriage of me being able to provide high level service and of value to people in a big moment in their life, while also having huge earning potential for myself to be successful. So as my clients are successful, I'm successful, right? Because I'm all about meeting their objective, and that can vary. That's the beauty of my work too, is, I could be helping somebody find a condo rental in Los Angeles, that really isn't a big payoff per se, but I really meet a need for their current reality, right? Or I could have somebody that comes to me as a lead or referred to me that's looking for a $3 or $4 million home, and it's a much different dynamic and everything in between. And so what I really focus my business on and what I pride myself on is just providing the outcome and really exceeding the expectations that every client has, whether it's a rental or whether it's somebody looking to do a big transaction.
100%. I mean, that's very refreshing to kind of hear, putting the prospect first in every instance. I guess from your point of view, I mean, I know you're an LA native. You kind of, I guess this question's a little bit null and void. But I guess you've probably traveled a lot. You've probably seen different cities, and me being a very curious person. Whenever I'm whenever I'm in a different city, I always think of, oh, I wonder how they do things like I do it. I
Yeah,
don't know why, but I don't know if other people have that same, perspective, but I'm always curious, right? I guess from your point of view, then, obviously being pretty much, in LA for pretty much your whole life, but when you do go to other towns, what are the advantages and disadvantages do you feel like being a realtor in a big city like LA would be compared to like a smaller town in the US or worldwide, I guess?
sure. Yeah, it's a great question. So, I've had the fortune of traveling around quite a few parts of the country. So I'm not saying I'm an expert on it, but I also have a lot of realtor relationships and loan broker relationships out of state. I refer clients that are moving out of state to other agents. So I have a little bit of an idea of some of the different dynamics that are at play. I think the big city, there's always more competition in a sense, right? So there's just more people. So there's more people that are going to be trying to be real estate professionals, right? Or mortgage professionals. So I think the advantage is you have such an array of properties to choose from in a big city, right? From studio sized condos to mansion estate style properties, right? So that's really unique, I think, in a lot of ways. And the nice thing is there's, you know, you don't have to drive as far necessarily. I mean, you might be in traffic for a while, especially in Los Angeles.
I've heard.
Um, but like you're not driving 2 or 3 hours out in a rural area to look at land or something like that for the most part. So typically I serve all of Southern California. The greater Los Angeles area is my bread and butter. I'm in the San Fernando Valley, so that would be my more specific area. I think the beauty of a place like Los Angeles, a big city, is you have a ton of diversity. I mean, my clients are from all walks of life, all socioeconomic backgrounds, you name it. In fact, my colleagues joke with me. They're like, you literally work with like the United Nations, and I pride myself on that. I really enjoy working with different cultures, different backgrounds, people that are at different stages of life. Just starting out of college, just got their first job. Maybe starting their family, those types of things, retiring and want to downsize. So it's cool because selling real estate in the big city, you serve people at all stages of lifestyle of life. Smaller, more rural areas, my colleagues there, they have challenges where you just don't have the volume that you do in a large city, but you also have a slower pace of life,
Mm,
in
that's
relatively speaking. You have maybe some more interesting properties because you'll deal with farmland and ranches and, rural type nuances, water, lakes, stuff like that you really don't deal with in Los Angeles or a major metro area. So those are just some of the big differences. I do think as well, I don't know what we're going to get into down the road, but excuse me. I do think it will be interesting to see. I think the real estate markets tend to be more stable in major metros. So if there is a slowdown or a downturn, it's not as severe in places like Los Angeles and New York and stuff like that, because there's always a demand from around the world for people to want to be in those cities versus maybe like rural Nebraska or
yeah.
something like that. It's a little more of a niche where, but then you think about today, people aren't as location sensitive for jobs because a lot of them can do, web stuff like this and work remotely. So
Yeah.
maybe that won't play out the same as it has historically.
Yeah, no, 100%. And thank you for the detailed answer because, it's very refreshing to get both sides of the coin here. In that instance, I guess, from being in a major city like LA, New York, Atlanta, for example, um, how important is it, or how do you feel building relationships, and not only building them but maintaining relationships with clients beyond the transaction, right? Because real estate and sales and industries like these are very high transactional type industries, right? So how do
Yeah.
you maintain these relationships beyond the transactions, so you're not always going to the client and they always think, oh, this guy's just going to sell me something? How do you kind of
Right.
maintain that beyond?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't really view myself. I mean, look, at the end of the day, real estate, the end goal is a sale, right? Because the client wants to either sell a property or purchase a property, right? So I don't think of sales in a negative or pejorative sense. But I don't consider myself a salesman or salesperson. I mean, even though that's kind of like the end result of what happens when I achieve a client objective. I like to think of myself. Well, I mean, we're literally agents of our clients, so we're fiduciaries. But I like to think of myself as a trusted advisor. And so what I tell people is I'm here for you before, during, and after the transaction. And my hope is that we'll have a lifelong relationship for you and your network, that I'll exceed expectations so wildly and your trust level so high that you wouldn't hesitate to refer me to your network, right? Like that's the highest compliment I can have, and that's the best advertising I can have, right? And real estate's an industry where it shows that people tend to work with the first or second agent they meet face to face, or that they're referred to, because
Yeah.
it's all trust, right? There's a gazillion agents out there. Most of the agents don't close deals regularly. Something like 80% of the agents are, less than 2 deals a year in California, and the top 20% are the ones that close 6+ deals a year. And you really need to be active in the market, because the market changes, right? Dynamics in the market change, and they're not published publicly, right? They could even be neighborhood specific, right? So I think that's really key. And then remind me your question specifically again. I want to make sure that I
Yeah, it's
had it.
about, maintaining the relationships beyond the
Yeah.
transaction,
So
right?
yeah, so the trusted advisor angle, like that's really what I'm going for. I think ideally, I like everybody to be my friend, but I realize not everybody's going to be my friend, right?
Yeah.
And on a personal level, and that's okay, right? But I would say the majority of my clients, I mean, I think like almost 65-star reviews that I've accumulated, and that's just them voluntarily doing it, right? I don't pay them for it; it's all volunteer, right? Um, I think I think my clients know that at the end of the day, I am happy to like walk away from a deal if it's not making sense for them, and because it does me no good and them no good to not be 110% satisfied with their purchase or their sale. And so I'd say probably like 80% of my clients basically are friends. So what I do is, I follow up on birthdays. I invite people to, parties or soirees that I'm having, or I try to be available for their life events. I'm fortunate to have been invited to weddings and birthday parties and those things. I do some follow up, like social media, and of course follow all my clients. I think most, if not all of them, follow me. So we stay in touch that way. And then I do occasional emails, but I'm not one of those people that constantly emails my clients, even though a lot of people tell you that's best practice and I should be doing that, just to stay top of mind with info. But yeah, I really take the relational approach. And I think a lot of my business is referral related. And so I think people know they can call me with any questions, even if it's not an immediate business need for me, or for them to utilize my services, or they can send a friend that has a scenario. And sometimes it works out. Sometimes it's a year down the road that we actually transact something. You know what I mean? So I take that trusted advisor, long-term relationship approach. That's my
That's
take on it.
that's really interesting the way you said that, because when you touched on the fact of essentially real estate is a transactional relationship, but the fact that you don't, I mean, there's countless number of realtors that I've experienced personally, that will constantly bombard you even after you've made the transaction, right? Of
Yeah.
you've got this on offer, or why don't you sell this, or why don't you do this?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not interested at the moment. I've just bought from you. Can you please leave me alone for like
Yeah.
6 months, please? That'd be great. And then I think it's very refreshing to hear the fact that you kind of do give that people that breathing space, because at the end of the day, like, like if you can maintain that human to human connection, people look at
Yeah.
you beyond a salesman, beyond the fact it's a transaction, beyond the fact that and you be able to essentially maintain that relationship more organically, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, every transaction or every relationship is a journey, right? It's like, if I meet somebody who comes to me and they just got married and they want to get pre-approved and they want to buy a home, and then we get the pre-approval done and they qualify. Like, that's an exciting moment in somebody's life, right? As one example. And then it might be 3, 4, 5, 6 months. We're out seeing properties. We're building this relationship. Like, there's ups and downs to it, right? There's a psychological aspect to it, right? And they're living their lives in the process of it all. You know what I mean? So it's always exciting closing day, the end of the transaction, from consummation to the end of the transaction, you might say. But it's also a little bit. Sometimes I feel like a little bit of loss too, because I've been so connected on a daily basis, communicating with a client that I'm actively showing or in escrow or listing their house for sale, right? And then when the transaction's done, there's not really need to talk on a daily basis, So I do miss that, and that's hard for some people, I think, in this industry, that aspect of it. So yeah, like you said, I don't like to bombard them, but I like to let them know that I'm always here for them. And I kind of feel out how much I can keep in touch with somebody on a consistent basis, But all my clients, for the most part, get at least 1 to 2 personalized communications from either a card or an email, just to touch base, follow up. Sometimes I'll give like a property, like an updated property valuation report, just so they can kind of understand where their equity truly lies. Because Zillow and Redfin, these sites, they give estimators, but I try to look at actual recently sold comps and give them like realistically, here's what you're looking at. And because of that, I've had clients that say, hey, we're thinking about doing this type of remodel work. Here's the investment. What do you think? That sort of thing. So there's a continued dialogue about their investment, And then I always think about man, it's so cool because you know, 5 years later, I remember when they first bought the house, and now they have two young kids, and they're enjoying the house, and their vision is unfolding. You know, it's really a cool aspect. I think a lot of people think realtors are just about the money, and sure, there's some people like that. There's people like that in every industry, and I'm not gonna lie, like making money is the goal. Like anybody at their job, right? That's the goal. But if you can love what you do and love the people that you serve, I mean, that's to me like that's like, you know, you're hitting a grand slam basically if you can do that.
Are those like one of your goals? I mean, I guess are those like your goals embedded into each like calendar year? Because like you said, like of course it's not all about making money, even though you run a business and you know X, Y, and Z, it is about making the money, but maintaining those
Yeah.
relationships and you know building that connection between the customer at the end of the day. Are those like
Yeah.
active goals that you work on every single year?
Yeah, really it is. I mean, it's you know, I wish I could say I have a magic formula. I mean, there's some realtors that are really successful, and they're like an industrial machine basically, right? It's like from this day on this day they do this from the, like they're just completely regimented and scheduled, and that's great, and they crush it, and like and now and they serve people well. For me, I take much more of a relational approach to things. And I don't put money at the forefront. I put the relationship and the outcome, right? Because if I'm hearing what people's needs really are, and then I'm building that relationship, and then I'm achieving their outcomes and maybe even exceeding their outcomes, the money is going to come. The money at the end is going to come, and I'm going to have success. They're going to have success, and then it's going to be a lifelong relationship. You know what I mean? But if a client feels like I was just trying to do the quickest and easiest for them and didn't serve them well, that makes me feel terrible. And then the likelihood of us having a relationship and, you know, enjoying a lifelong journey together is probably very slim.
Yeah, 100%. And so Sam, I mean, so we got one fun last question for you. Okay,
Sure.
so at the Icons of Real Estate, you know, we're the number one real estate podcast network, and we're passionate about making podcasting more accessible for everyone.
Yeah.
If you had your own podcast, right, what would you call it and why?
Sure. I started, this is a little bit embarrassing. So I started my own podcast like towards the end of the COVID, like 2022 or something like that. And it was called, it's called Terra Firma. And so it was not necessarily real estate focused. It actually was basically just random topics. I'm somebody who, though I sell real estate and I do mortgages, and I'm a real estate professional. I have a keen interest in current events, philosophy, politics, just, you know, and then of course market related stuff as well. So it was kind of this broad, you know, I know a lot of people say rule number one, you need to be laser focused on your podcast. You have to have a specific niche, right? And that's probably true. But for me, I just like having legit conversations, and you know, some of that will focus around real estate and the market and kind of where things are at in the economy. But I like a myriad of topics, sports, whatever it may be,
Right.
kind of like a smorgasbord. And so Terra Firma came about because I really believe, you know, that Latin word of like solid ground, basically, right? Terra firma. And so to me, I like to have rooted conversations that are real and authentic, that don't shy away from, you know, sometimes controversial things or challenging topics, you know, and that. And so that's the name that I came up with. So I hope to be able to reinvigorate it here in the near future.
Right, you know, that's an interesting way of looking at it because a lot of business podcasts, especially like in the real estate field, even though it is fixated on one topic, people do come to you for a particular thing. For example, if you know, for example, we had a gentleman on here that specialized in multifamily assets, right? If you
Yep.
just had a podcast that was just about multifamily assets, that's great because you're
Yeah.
serving a particular niche. People probably Googling and searching that up and they want to know more about it. That's amazing. But if you kind of dig deep and you make your podcast a little bit more relatable, like talking about sports or what type of football team do you support or what type of
Yeah.
like things that are more relatable.
Yeah.
I personally find that people always want to buy from people they like, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, for me, I look at it as like, you know, I am who I am. Like, I don't shy away from that. Like, you know, they say, oh, you should never talk politics or like that. Like, I don't talk partisan politics, but like, I look at issues because, you know, oddly enough, politics actually does affect the way we live our lives. So, like, if a certain area has a certain homelessness policy, good, bad, indifferent, whatever somebody thinks, there's a real effect on the neighborhood, right? Not just property value or whatever, but like on the people that are actually on the street for whatever reasons it may be, and the people that aren't on the street but live in the neighborhood and have kids and have businesses and all those things, right? So, anybody, you could have people, some people would say, don't talk about that because you might offend people that are on the other side or whatever. For me, it's not about sides. It's really about issues. And then, maybe you could find a side that I align on or kind of, intonate what that might be. But I am who I am. I just like to be very real. I don't purposely try to be offensive, but I also, I don't really have a passion for like those podcasts, and God bless them, right? The ones where it's like I do multifamily assets. So everything is the same, 13-minute podcast on multifamily stuff. Cause the reality is how many people are really going to tune into that on a
Yeah.
daily basis?
How
You know what I
many
mean?
how many times are you going to say the same thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
I see in the background. Sorry to cut you off. It really caught my eye just now that you got sports cards in the background, right? Like
I
the
do.
PSA graded sports cards. Am I right? Uh,
Yes.
I collect them as well. So I just
Yeah.
just caught my eye in the background. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying though. Like having different aspects to your, I
Yeah.
mean, for example, let's say I was an investor, for example, and I was really into like, I don't know, like a PSA 10, I don't know, Gretzky card, and then you have
Sure.
it, you could talk about it, and I'm like, wow, this
Yeah.
guy is, into what I'm into. I might, take a liking to
Yeah.
what, right?
Yeah, to me,
So,
I love to travel. I love to read. I golf regularly. I'm into watches, sports cards. I play sports. I coach my son's baseball team,
oh,
little league baseball team. So to me, it's like nobody's gonna like everything about me, and some people take the tack of I just keep business, but I think at the end of the day, most people can relate to somebody who's just authentic and has a perspective. Maybe they agree, maybe they don't, but there's something that they like about me because I am who I am, and I want them to be who they are too. So yeah, that's just kind of how I settled on. Wait, we'll see if I get to reinvigorate that podcast though, because I'm sure, as you have a bigger operation, but like it's a lot of work to be able to, especially as a solo person, to shoot, film, topics, edit, all that stuff.
yeah, no, 100%. Well, I mean, we could have a conversation about that off air if that's something worthwhile.
Sure. Yeah.
Cool. Well, Sam, pleasure having you on the podcast. Thank you so much for your not only positivity but your wealth of knowledge in terms of going into each question and really breaking down the importance of having relationships, not just focusing on the financial aspect, which obviously will come, but more so if you do focus on essentially the relationship aspect and building the most value that you can from each transaction that you have after the transaction, then it will ask for a much more fruitful business, personal, money relationship later on down the line. So thank
Yep.
you so much for your input and your perspective. Guys, if you've even learned 10% of what I've what I've experienced on this podcast, I'm sure you guys are in for a treat. Thank you so much again for tuning in. Sam, thank you so much for joining. And it is me, Masoud, with the Real Icons of Real Estate podcast. And we'll catch you in the next one. Over and out.
Thanks.